Hello, and welcome all to Movie Hunter, the show that tracks down the quality of all sorts of movies. My name is Hunter, and today in the 44th episode, our target is Inside Out 2, produced by Pixar Animation Studios and distributed by Walt Disney Studios Motion Pictures. Following the success of 2015's Inside Out, a sequel was quickly suspected, and it wasn't hard to see why, with behind-the-scenes productions revealing that many more emotions were originally planned than just 5. Development began on the film in January of 2020, and it was officially confirmed in September of 2022. Similarly to the first film, this one went through many different iterations when selecting which emotions to add. Much research was also done on the film, with them consulting psychologists Lisa D'Amour and Dan Keltner, the latter of whom also helped with the previous film. They also had a group of 9 teenagers whom they took input from, who influenced numerous scenes. In arguably the only benefit from the event of the time, the lockdowns from COVID-19 allowed director Kesley Mann and producer Mark Nielsen to do research of their own with their children. Due to the worldwide pandemic, 3 of Pixar's films, Soul, Luca, and Turning Red, were denied theatrical releases, with many Pixar employees criticizing Disney's decision to release them straight to Disney+, especially by the time of Turning Red in March of 2022. Pixar's first films to release to theaters again, Lightyear and Elemental, both underperformed, putting a lot of pressure on this film to perform well. Another round of troubles was presented to the film with the 2023 writer strikes and the 2023 actor strikes. While Pixar's Elio was pushed back to 2025, Pixar was determined to keep Inside Out 2's release date, leading to, quote, the largest crunch in the studio's history, with it being reported that Pete Docter, the director of the previous film, having to step in as an uncredited co-director. The film released on June 14, 2024 and made $1.699 billion, with a budget of $200 million. It became Pixar's 28th film after 2023's Elemental and before 2025's Elio. It became the highest-grossing animated film of all time, until it was surpassed by Ni 2 just 9 months later. The director was Kesley Mann, and Meg Lefauve returned to write the screenplay, alongside Dave Holstein. The story was by Kesley Mann and Meg Lefauve, and the producer was Mike Nielsen. The cinematography was by Adama Habib and Jonathan Pikto. The editor was Marisa Howitz, and the music was by Andrea Datzman. The cast sees the return of Amy Poehler, Phyllis Smith, Lewis Black, Diane Lane, and Kyle MacLachlan. The cast also sees Tony Hale, replacing Bill Hader, Lisa Lapira, replacing Mindy Kaling, Maya Hawke, Ayo Edebiri, Adeli Exarchopoulos, Paul Walter Hauser, and Kensington Tallman, replacing Caitlin Diaz. The film was nominated for 63 awards as listed by Wikipedia, of which it won 6 of. The film also saw a Disney Plus show called Dream Productions at the end of 2024. The film starts 2 years after the previous film, with Riley entering high school next year with her 2 friends Bree and Grace, all 3 of whom are invited to a 3-day hockey camp. We are also introduced to the sense of self, which are the memories that shape Riley's beliefs, with Joy wanting to keep only positive memories there. Joy builds a machine in order to launch negative memories to the back of Riley's mind. The night before the first day of hockey camp, an alarm goes off in headquarters, leading to several mind workers to demolish and remodel the place, only to leave it in a mess. In addition, 4 new emotions arrive: anxiety, envy, embarrassment, and ennui, which is boredom essentially. On the car ride to the camp, Riley learns that her friends will be attending a different school. This causes a clash between Joy and anxiety, with Joy wanting Riley to spend one last weekend with her friends, and anxiety wanting Riley to take the opportunity to join the high school's team, the Firehawks. Anxiety quickly develops a plan using Joy's machine to send the sense of self to the back of mind to begin making a new one, and sending the original emotions to a vault. Anxiety gets Riley to abandon her friends and tries to become friends with the Firehawks. After escaping the vault, Joy sends Sadness to go back to headquarters to keep things under control, while the rest of them travel to the back of the mind to reclaim Riley's sense of self. When Sadness sneaks into headquarters, Embarrassment quickly discovers her, but ultimately decides to help her stay hidden. With anxiety building up, anxiety, she convinces Riley to sneak into the coach's office to read her notebook, where she discovers that she doesn't think Riley is ready yet, leading to Anxiety's new sense of self to be complete, now making Riley believe that she isn't good enough. Joy and the others are able to get back to headquarters by creating an avalanche of the negative emotions into the sense of self pool, further altering it. Anxiety's plan isn't working out how she wanted it to, leading to her giving Riley an anxiety attack, while in the penalty box after having ran into one of her friends, focusing too hard on trying to be perfect. Joy and Anxiety have a heart-to-heart where they both realize that they can't choose who Riley is, with a third sense of self being made both out of the positive and negative emotions. Riley is able to finish hockey camp, and the 9 emotions now all get along, and the film ends with her being recruited to the Firehawks. Let's start with talking about how the film functions as a sequel. It's a bit of a rehashed topic around here by this point, but I think Inside Out 2 actually presents a very interesting conversation, with the first film's creativity being a huge highlight for me. Now, ultimately, I think that the film does a good job of expanding upon the first film's creativity, even a great job in some respects. However, there are a number of complaints I have to go over first. Firstly, and probably the largest disappointment, is the animation, and especially the music. The first film had a lot of standout pieces of music, with tracks that I think about a lot. This film, however, I'd be hesitant to say is bad, but I cannot remember a single song from the film. It's possible that I wasn't paying enough attention to it, I'll fully admit that fact, but with the first film, I feel like I didn't have to, as the music was very beautiful sounding, and the film made sure that you knew that, whereas this film doesn't really do that in any scene I can think of. The animation I have very comparable thoughts about. Not bad, but nothing that stood out to me as especially beautiful. From there, I have much more minor nitpicks that I nonetheless feel should be mentioned. Firstly, and possibly most confusingly, is the way that Riley meets her friends who are new to the film. It shows that they met when they were comparatively young, but in the first film, the entire plot revolves around Riley moving away from her friends, which would include these 2 friends, no? It drives me crazy because 1, I haven't seen a single other person mention this, 2, I keep thinking I'm missing something because of how obvious it seems, and 3, would it really have been so hard to just have Riley meet those friends after the events of the first film? It takes place 2 years after the original, and that's more than enough time for her to have made these friends, and it even would have been a nice continuation to the first film, showing that Riley's distress at moving ultimately got better, and that she was able to make friends still. Finally, I take mild issue with the new sense of self system, and the lack of the use of the core memories, which previously played a major role in the film. I think that the sense of self should have been better explained, with it being implied that it was there the whole time, which brings the pretty obvious flaw of us not seeing or hearing it at all in the first film. Similarly, the lack of core memories feels jarring, with the ending of the first film showing a bunch of new islands that these memories could have been a bunch of new islands from these memories that could have been easily explored in this film. Ultimately, that last complaint is a rather small one, but still something that was on my mind. Luckily, from there, the film pretty much excels at expanding the creativity of the first. The new emotions, most notably, are really great, but I'll get into that later. The original emotions are also handled well, for the most part, which I'll similarly get into later. The new locations, while maybe not as necessary or impressive as the first film, are still really cool. Some notable ones are the back of the mind, the vault, the stream of consciousness, the sarcasm, the rumor mill, the parade of future careers, and the brainstorm. These are all pretty fun, and I especially like how some of them factor into the plot. But I can't help but think, though, that this wasn't done with as much charm or uniqueness as it was the first time. I think a part of this has to do with the adventure not feeling as necessary as the first film, but again, I'll get into it later. I do like the sense of self-system as well, despite it maybe not being as solid as an idea as the first film's ideas. I do really like how it gets Riley involved in the plot more, though, as she is much less of a character in the first film. Not entirely bland, granted, but still, the increase in relevancy here is noticeable, which works in the film's favor for sure. Overall, while not as charming or unique as the first film, I think it still does a good job. And despite not being a shining example of it, I think I'd still say that it's a good example of how to expand on the creativity of the original film. While we're on the topic of the new, let's talk about the new emotions. Envy is probably the most lacking of the new emotions, with her not getting a lot of moments to shine, but she does play off of anxiety well. She has some fun visual gags, my favorite of which being that she is smaller than everyone else, which she is envious of. Ennui is perhaps the most creative or unique of these guys, with indifference and laziness being played to pretty great use throughout the film. Embarrassment is probably the most surprising of them, not in terms of how he affects Riley, but in how he affects the story. It was really interesting and insightful in a way to see that embarrassment aided sadness without an explanation really being given. Embarrassment is pretty interesting to analyze as he does initially help out anxiety, but ultimately decides to help sadness remain hidden, but without there ever really being an explanation, which is something that left me pondering. This could be me overanalyzing, but I think the reason for Embarrassment's switch is because of his embarrassment of anxiety's wrongdoings and trying to control everything, even at the cost of Riley's friends. I think that Embarrassment offers a very unique addition to the crew, and his shift in character is both surprising and interesting. That leaves Anxiety, who easily has the biggest impact on the story. She essentially fills the void left by Joy, with Anxiety now being the one in the wrong, or at least the most in the wrong. What's most interesting to me is how she doesn't have any ill intent, again very similarly to Joy in the first film, perhaps even less so with her being relatively nice to everyone, compared to Joy who is very disliking of sadness. What's especially interesting about this is how she's so confident with her plan up until it all collapses on itself in the end, causing Anxiety to give Riley a panic attack. Now, and this goes for a lot of the metaphors used in the film, this finale has been analyzed by a lot of people who are all way more educated on the subject than I am, but the bottom line for me is that it comes across very natural and realistic. The scene is very, well, anxiety-inducing, and I think that it's done really well. Overall, I think the new characters work really well. An admittable misfortune here is that they don't feel as necessary or iconic as the core five, but they nonetheless do a good job of filling in the gaps. Envy, while easily the most underutilized, is still a fun time. Ennui plays her minimal role to essential perfection. Embarrassment creates a very interesting turn of events, and Anxiety makes for a great central antagonist with a finale that really brings the whole thing together. Finally, that leaves us with the original five emotions: joy, sadness, anger, fear, and disgust. Fear is the most disappointing of these, with him feeling the most unlike his original movie counterpart. In part, this is due to the replacement of his original voice actor, Bill Hader, in place of Tony Hale, and the change is quite noticeable, at least to me. On top of that, he also acts uncharacteristically antagonistic towards Joy, blaming her at every little misstep and comparing her to Anxiety, who he has met for a total of a few minutes. Anger, on the other hand, I quite like, with him acting pretty much the same, but with him showing a really nice side that doesn't feel out of place at all, and it's really cool to see him help Joy when she's feeling down. Disgust, on the other hand, has practically nothing to do, and is pretty much just along for the ride. Not all that dissimilarly to the first film, honestly, but this time to a much greater degree. Sadness and joy, meanwhile, are both incredibly enjoyable, with the film doing a great job at making them seem like they came right out of the original film. It seems like a low bar, and to some degree it is, but I am extremely pleased that their character arcs in this film are kept. So many instances take time to show that Joy still respects sadness like she learned to in the previous film. I also really liked how this carries over to the introduction of the new emotions, with Joy warmly welcoming them and trying her best to be patient with them. I also like how Joy trusts sadness to infiltrate headquarters while the rest of them search for the sense of self. Sadness infiltrating headquarters is also a pretty fun turn of events. Joy, meanwhile, gets a nice little arc about not being able to control everything all the time, with her pushing certain memories to the back of the mind in order to, in her words, lighten the load. This all comes back in the end, where she is stuck on top of the mountain of the memories she dumped there, only for her to realize that, similar to anxiety, she was forcing Riley to become someone by pushing certain memories away, instead of letting them be a part of Riley and learn from them. This puts her in an interesting position, as the only way to stop anxiety in time is for Joy to send all the memories into the sense of self. I don't feel like this lesson was as well fleshed out as the lesson in the first film, but it is still good nonetheless. I think a big reason for this is that the adventure through the mind is just not as entertaining the second time around, and results in a second act that doesn't feel all that engaging. It also creates a weird dynamic where Joy realizes she is similar to anxiety, but the two haven't had any screen time together since anxiety's introduction, with one minor exception. Overall, these complaints are all pretty small, but are things I thought worth mentioning since they stop the film from reaching the best of the best, in my opinion. I give Inside Out 2 a 9 out of 10 for being a worthy successor to the original. Despite not living up to the first film's greatness, it gets pretty darn close. The new emotions are integrated well, the original emotions are still good, for the most part. The new personifications of the mind, while not as groundbreaking as the original, are still plenty entertaining. It is an overall enjoyable movie experience with a lot of heart that I can safely recommend, even if it falls slightly short in some areas. Well, that's all, folks. I hope you enjoyed, and feel free to share any opinions you had on the movie. A new episode releases each week, so stay tuned to see which film I cover next. And in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.